A new species of human was discovered in 2021, and this species may be able to solve a mystery that's been bothering anthropologists for a very long time now. The mystery is that researchers discovered that 124,000 years ago, a Neanderthal who lived in Europe carried Homo sapiens DNA within their genome. That is approximately 70,000 years earlier than the first arrival of Homo sapiens in Europe. So for many years after this discovery was made, the researchers wondered, how was this even possible? My name is Kaylee, and in this video I am going to tell you everything that I could find out about Nesher Ramla Homo, a new species, how they were discovered, the research into this being a new species, and the possibility of this being a hybrid species between Neanderthals and Homo sapiens, modern humans. A few years ago, I made a video on this newly presented human species known as Nesher Ramla Homo. But late last year, in August, there was a discovery that looked between very early hybridization between Neanderthals and Homo sapiens in the Levant area. And after I looked into this new discovery, I feel like this hybridization may have led to the species of Nesher Ramla Homo. So does that really make Nesher Ramla Homo a new species, or does it simply make it a hybrid species? And would this hybrid species need its own name and classification in the human evolutionary timeline? So let's find all of that out in this video, shall we? So there's a quarry in Nesher Ramla, in the country of Israel, but I'll just call it the Levant area in this video. And this quarry is operated by a cement factory where workers came across hominin remains. And in 2010, this quarry became a protected site so that archaeologists could come in and do proper excavations that were needed to be carried out to find out more about these hominin remains. Unfortunately, as you can imagine, a quarry for a cement company wants to get back to work as soon as possible, so time was of the essence, which meant that the archaeologists did not have too much time to carry out their investigation of the remains that they were uncovering. So after the excavations were carried out and the work of the archaeologists on site was finished, the excavation site at the quarry got demolished so that the cement factory could get back to their work. So yeah, at this point in time, there is nothing left of the archaeological site in which the fossilized remains were found of these hominins. That's sad. The Nesher Ramla archaeological site was a karst depression, which is a shallow pit as it was dissolved like limestone does, a very, very long time ago. And this pit was used by different hominids for quite some time as it is very rich in archaeological material and quite well preserved before it got demolished. This pit gradually filled in with sediment as time went by and therefore preserved its contents quite well. So the team of archaeologists discovered parts of a roof of a hominin skull and a nearly complete jawbone. These are thought to have belonged to one individual. Not clear if this individual was a man or a woman, but the teeth are an indication that the individual was a young adult. The sediments in which the fossilized bones were found date from between 140,000 and 120,000 years ago, which means that the fossilized bones date from that time frame. Homo sapiens had already emerged in Africa by this time, because they did that 300,000 years ago. So at first it was of course assumed that the hominin fossils that were found at Nesher Ramla were Homo sapiens. Of course, around 140,000 years ago, Homo sapiens were not the only hominins. Neanderthals were also living in Europe and Western Asia, and the Denisovans lived in Eastern Asia at the time. So the very first thing the archaeologists did was try and find out if the fossilized remains could belong to any of these three known hominins. Could they be Homo sapiens, Neanderthals, or Denisovans? The skull was quite low and flat, not like the round and high skull shape of Homo sapiens, and the jawbone did not show the chin characteristics of Homo sapiens either. So, as you can imagine, the thought that the remains could belong to Homo sapiens was quickly scrapped. The bones did not fit any of the other known living hominins of the time either, so they did not belong to Neanderthals, nor did they belong to Denisovans. The bones, however, did show in some ways a few similarities to the bones of Neanderthals, but not enough as the bones resemble other features of other hominins living earlier as well, like Homo erectus and Homo antecessor. So as you might not know, there have been bones discovered in other locations in the world, including the Levant area, with which the Nesher Ramla remains share similarities, although all these bones are unidentified as well. To name some of these locations, we have the Kiesem, Zutier and Tabun sites in the Levant area, and we have the Sierra de Atapuerca in Spain as well. Some of the bones found in Spain are significantly older than the Nesher Ramla remains, which could suggest that these bones in Spain might belong to Homo antecessor. There seem to be some remains from China and India as well that show similarities with the Nesher Ramla Homo individual as well. So the team of archaeologists that were researching the fossilized remains that were found at the Nesher Ramla site in the Levant area now argues that these bones and possibly the other remains found at the other sites in the Levant area, India, China, and possibly even Spain could be considered a new group of hominins in the genus Homo. This species is believed to have lived in Western Asia between 420,000 and 120,000 years ago, and these researchers do not like to classify hominins as separate species, so they simply refer to these previously unknown hominins as Homo Nesher Ramla or Nesher Ramla Homo. This team also doesn't like to classify Neanderthals as a different species, as they see all hominins to be of the same species and genus, just a different lineage, because they have all been able to reproduce with each other. Which is fair. That's a fair statement. I completely understand why they say this. They believe that the Nesher Ramla Homo is a remnant species or survivor species of its older source population, possibly from the same lineage as Neanderthals, but split off earlier from that line. Nesher Ramla Homo has many features that are similar to the Neanderthals, so this could very well be the case, especially because the Nesher Ramla Homo itself is too young to be an ancestor of the Neanderthals. Another possibility for the similarities between the Nesher Ramla Homo and the Neanderthals is interbreeding and hybridization. The Nesher Ramla Homo could have genetically contributed to the evolution of the anatomy of the Neanderthals, which resulted in certain aspects of their anatomy being similar. And then there are the researchers that believe that the Nesher Ramla Homo is another descendant from Homo heidelbergensis, which is currently seen as the last common ancestor of Homo sapiens, Homo neanderthalensis, and now possibly even Nesher Ramla Homo. And now in August of 2025, there was a study published that looked into hybridization of Neanderthals and Homo sapiens that occurred in the Levant area. So for a very long time, it was thought that Neanderthals only reached the Levant area some 70,000 years ago. But early Neanderthals seem to have reached this area as early as 400,000 years ago. And Homo sapiens, who started leaving the African continent around 200,000 years ago, may have encountered these early Neanderthals in the Levant area and started interbreeding with them. So researchers found a human fossil dating back to 140,000 years ago of a child, and this child's skull shape resembles that of Homo sapiens. But its intracranial blood supply system, the lower jaw, and the inner ear structure are typical of Neanderthals. Thus, this shows that this child was a Homo sapiens Neanderthal hybrid. But comparing the skull of a child with the fragmentary remains that we have of an adult Nesher Ramla Homo is very difficult, as there have always been many differences between the skull of a child and an adult. So at this point in time, unless we discover more Nesher Ramla Homo fossils, we cannot say with any certainty that the Nesher Ramla hominin is the result of hybridization between Neanderthals and Homo sapiens. But it is for sure a possibility that we need to keep in mind. There is, however, a mystery that could possibly be solved now. As I mentioned at the start of this video, that there was a Neanderthal that lived some 124,000 years ago in Europe that carried Homo sapiens DNA within their genome. This is approximately 70,000 years before the first Homo sapiens arrived in Europe. And I hear you think, Kaylee, you mean 80,000 years before Homo sapiens arrived. Can't you do math? Well, yeah, but Homo sapiens didn't arrive 40,000 years ago. A few years ago it was discovered that Homo sapiens arrived in Europe 10,000 years earlier than previously thought. So they arrived in Europe 50,000 years ago, at least. And I've made a video on this a couple years ago when the news that Homo sapiens arrived earlier in Europe had come out. And I do highly recommend watching that video. But okay, back to the mystery. How is it possible that Homo sapiens DNA was found in a Neanderthal 70,000 years before the first Homo sapiens had arrived in Europe and before Homo sapiens and Neanderthals started to interbreed in Europe? Well, the answer to this mystery could very possibly be Nesher Ramla Homo. They could have interbred with the Neanderthals and or the Homo sapiens in the Levant area. These Nesher Ramla Homo sapiens hybrids or these Nesher Ramla Neanderthal hybrids could have then started to interbreed with the Western Asian Neanderthals, who then later on started to inhabit the European lands and interbred with the Western European Neanderthals. So at this point in time, this is actually the best solution and answer to this mystery, and honestly, it's quite a strong hypothesis. Something that makes this hypothesis even more credible is that there is clear evidence that Homo sapiens and Nesher Ramla Homo have interacted with each other. And that is because they made similar tools using the same processes, which highly suggests that they learned this tool making from each other. Of course, it's not clear who learned from whom, but it's clear that they did the same things. There is, of course, some caution that we need to keep in mind when we look at the technical details of stone tools and how difficult it is to link that to populations. There is, however, still a part of the mystery that is hard to solve. The modern human DNA still has traits of ghost populations, ghost species. These ghost populations are groups of people whose anatomy we do not know yet, whose fossils we haven't found yet, whose DNA we haven't been able to extract yet. There is a possibility that Nesher Ramla is one of these ghost populations, although Nesher Ramla could have simply been a hybrid population as well that had genes from both Neanderthals and Homo sapiens, but was from an earlier split of lineage. Research like this shows that we still have gaps in our evolutionary timeline. There are still unknown hominins and lineages or species or whatever you want to call it that will fill up these gaps in the timeline as we discover them in the future. There also seems to be a descendant from Homo erectus that traveled to Europe, and this could possibly be Homo antecessor that I covered in a video on my channel a few years ago. It is already hypothesized that it's actually Homo antecessor who traveled through the Levant area, which is the area of where the Nesher Ramla fossils were found. And they could have very well interbred with the ancestors of Nesher Ramla Homo, which could then have created an antecessor Nesher Ramla hybrid of some sorts, which could have resulted in the Nesher Ramla Homo fossils that we have found at this point in time. But what seems to be crystal clear is that the Levant area, or the Middle East, if you will, was a place where all kinds of influences from Africa, Asia, and Europe came together and merged before spreading out again. It is not clear how important this was to the evolution of Neanderthals, Denisovans, and Homo sapiens. And hopefully, as time goes on, we learn more about this Nesher Ramla Homo species and the implications that they could have had on the evolution of the others in the region. But for now, I want to ask you all about your opinion on this entire subject. What do you think of the Nesher Ramla Homo species? Do you think it is its own species, a separate species, or do you think it's just a hybrid species? And if you think that it is a hybrid species, what species do you think resulted in the Nesher Ramla Homo morphology? Let me know in the comments down below. And if you enjoyed watching, then don't forget to give this video a thumbs up, subscribe if you'd like to see more of these kind of videos, and click that bell icon if you want to be notified whenever I upload. If you haven't seen my previous videos yet, then click the card in the upper right corner or click one of the videos in the links down below. Or click a video in the end card. I mean, I cater to you. I've got more than enough videos. I've even changed 2 of my playlists into podcasts. So that may make it easier for you to listen to them on YouTube Music while you're driving your car. But yeah, I try my best to cater to all of you with all these fun subjects and human evolution, ancient history, new archaeological discoveries, and everything combined. I do want to say a massive thank you to my patrons and my channel members. Thank you so much for supporting me. Truly, it means the world to me. And this may be my last video that I'm filming before I leave to Peru, because I'm leaving on Sunday the 15th, and it's currently Thursday the 12th. So Holy hell. And I've got a live stream tonight, so. But yeah, you will see this after the live stream has already commenced. But yeah. Next week, no live stream because I will be in Peru and I will not live stream as I'm enjoying myself on this once in a lifetime trip. I'm sorry. When I get back, I will do another live stream, show some stuff and talk about everything I've experienced. But yeah, I'm excited. So yeah, Neanderthal skull. It's northo2.com. The shirt is Lindsay Nicole becoming human with all the awesome skulls of all these hominins on the sleeves. I don't think these shirts are available still, but she might do another merch drop soon, so keep an eye out on her merch store. And yeah, I will see you in the next video. Okay, bye!